The Sonos Era 300 or the Sonos Five. Both brilliant in their own right and both batting it out to be your next speaker. But which one's right for you? Let's find out. Hey guys, Elliot from Smart Home Sounds here, and we're back with the highly requested Sonos head-to-head for you. It's the trusty Sonos 5 versus the new kid on the block, the Sonos Era 300. Now, in reality, these are two very different speakers, but as two of Sonos's most premium wireless speaker options and with just £100 between them, I've got a sneaky suspicion there will be a few of you out there who just can't decide what the best option for you is. So hopefully this video will help you get closer to that decision. On the one hand, we've got the Sonos 5. It's been around for a while now and it sits at the top of the Sonos lineup as their most premium wireless speaker option and comes in with an RRP of £549. But we are seeing some good deals on these at the moment. With a 3.5mm line in and by far the biggest and most room-filling sound out of the Sonos collection, this more traditional speaker has definitely earned its stripes and deservedly asserted itself as the powerhouse in the Sonos lineup. As always though, the Sonos rumour mill is well and truly open for business, and we've been asked a couple of times now about the potential of an Era 500 coming one day. Now, this Sonos 5 is actually the second gen of this speaker and launched only 3 years back in 2020. Personally, I don't think this is calling for an update right now, and considering the Era 100 and 300 have only just launched, I don't see a 500 coming in a rush. But I do think it makes sense going forward for the lineup, and I can see it happening down the road. All I know for now though is the 5 is here to stay and still a speaker for you guys to be considering. On the other hand though, we've got this, the Sonos Era 300, a new addition to the Sonos lineup and one that has received a fair amount of hype around its release. With an RRP of £449, the Era 300 sits just below the Sonos 5 in the lineup. It offers a pretty unique experience for a single speaker, offering support for spatial audio with drivers firing sound to the front, sides and top. Now, just to clarify, both of these speakers can be used standalone, as a stereo pair, or as rears to a Sonos soundbar, and of course can be grouped with any other Sonos speakers you have around the home to form part of a wider ecosystem. Looking at these side by side, you don't need to be a genius to figure out they don't just sound different, but they look very different too. Both are available in black or white, but the Sonos Era 300 is a completely new take on the wireless speakers we've seen from Sonos before, and it's unique to say the least. Although its design might be a little bit divisive, it's definitely grown on us since its release earlier this year. There's some really nice design features that Sonos have brought to the table with this next-gen design, like the volume slider on top and the modified power cable on the back for ease of use, but it still hasn't moved too far away from the signature Sonos styling of recent years. The Sonos 5, well, it's got a little less flair than the Era 300 for sure, but considering it's still repping a similar design to the original Play 5, which was released back in 2009, you could say it's a design that's aged really well. It's quite a lot bigger than the Era 300, so you will need to think more about space to accommodate one of these, or two if you're thinking about getting a stereo pair. And it's not quite the feature piece that the Era 300 is, but it's a more traditional take on a Sonos speaker, and for some people, you might just prefer that. One thing to bear in mind is the placement of these speakers. Now, I'll come on to the internals in a moment, but as I mentioned, the Era 300 has drivers that fire sound in multiple directions, and so you do need to leave space around the speaker to make sure you're not blocking any of those drivers. For example, you wouldn't want to place the Era 300 in a bookshelf. The 5, on the other hand, while larger, could be placed on a bookshelf without impacting performance, so again, just another thing to consider there. Next up, let's talk features then, because as you'll know already, because these are the premium wireless options from Sonos, both of these speakers have a lot to live up to. Starting with the Era 300 though, featuring a total of 6 drivers made up of 2 sideways firing woofers, 2 sideways firing tweeters, 1 up firing tweeter and 1 front facing tweeter, all powered by 6 Class D amps, the Era 300 has been designed to offer a truly room-filling audio experience that offers something completely different than we've seen from a Sonos speaker before, and that's spatial audio. Now, spatial audio can be a bit of a minefield, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it right now, but if you're not sure what it is, we've made an explainer video here that is worth a watch to get your head around things. Essentially though, Sonos has designed this speaker to provide an all-encompassing sound profile that puts you at the heart of your entertainment by firing sound to the front, sides, and upwards. It's even able to play spatial audio from Apple Music too, making it the first non-Apple device capable of doing so, which is a big feat for sure. It's worth knowing that we are pretty early in the spatial audio lifecycle right now though, so while you can use these platforms to experience it, we expect more content will become available over time. Now, another big difference with the Era 300 is its much wider range of connectivity options in comparison to some of the other Sonos speakers out there, like the Five. Most notably, there's Bluetooth 5.0 support and a USB-C line import, so you can connect a turntable or CD player with the additional line-in adapter, making this and the Era 100 the only Sonos mains-powered speakers out there which offer support for both of these, which is a massive plus. There's also Wi-Fi 6 with all the standard connections like AirPlay 2, Spotify Connect, and voice control via Sonos Voice or Amazon Alexa. Sadly, there's no Google Assistant though, but according to Sonos, they're working on it and trying to fix the problem, but it could just take a while. Something else to consider is the Era 300 will not connect via the Sonos Mesh, instead betting on that Wi-Fi 6 connectivity. The Era 300 also supports a new version of TruePlay tuning, Sonos room optimization software, which means this is the first time Android users can get involved by using the quick tuning feature to optimize the speakers for your space. Now, advanced TruePlay tuning is still the best method to get the most from your home audio, but like always, you will need an iOS device to get that done with the Era 300. When it comes to the Sonos 5, well, there's no spatial audio for starters, and internally this speaker has a much more traditional makeup, consisting of 6 drivers with 3 mid and bass units, 2 angled tweeters facing outwards, and a front-facing tweeter too. The Five is primed for stereo listening though, and you've got a direct 3.5mm line in, meaning you can hook up a turntable or something like that without even having to faff around with a line-in adapter, which is absolutely ideal. There is Apple AirPlay 2 and TruePlay tuning for iOS devices, but no Bluetooth, quick tuning, or any mics for voice control. However, if you have got it paired up with a voice-enabled Sonos speaker, like an Arc for example, you will be able to get that functionality. For those of you that are new to the world of Sonos, it's worth mentioning that both of these speakers run off the Sonos S2 app, which offers software updates so your speakers can improve over time, EQ customization, music streaming, and radio service integration, and a super simple and easy setup, to name just a few features. Now, looking at these head-to-head in terms of functionality, you'd be right to think there's a slight step down when you look at the Sonos 5, which, to be honest, I think is more of an age thing. The Era 300 is definitely the more versatile choice of the two, and maybe if we did see an Era 500 in the future, that's something that might change. Don't get me wrong, the 5 ticks a lot of boxes, and for most people will be everything you're looking for in a wireless speaker, but if Bluetooth is important to you, for example, then the Era 300 does give you a few more options. How about sound quality though? Now, if you're a fan of the channel, you'll know we've spent a lot of time with both of these speakers, testing them in different spaces, in different setups, with loads of different content like music, movies, gaming, and sports, and we got some thoughts to share with you that might make your decision a little easier. Before all of that though, I'm gonna let you guys have a listen to these head-to-head too, so you can get a little flavour of what you can expect from these impressive speakers. Now, as always, what you hear over YouTube isn't gonna be exactly what we're hearing here in the studio, but it's designed to give you a little taste of what's to come from these two. So, Hopefully you enjoyed that one. I think it's fair to say both of these speakers are very impressive, albeit for completely different reasons. In terms of music listening, as a standalone speaker, there's no doubt that the Five is punchier and bassier than the Era 300. The Era isn't a slouch in this department by any stretch, but you have to give credit where credit is due to the Five. The Era 300, however, does stand out when it comes to the breadth and expansive nature of its performance, and its multi-directional audio is the real standout for sure, and that only gets better when you're listening to Dolby Atmos tracks. We've had the Era 300 since release, and yeah, the 360-degree soundscape was pretty novel at first, but honestly, for me, it hasn't lost any of its impact a couple of months down the line. Breathe by Pink Floyd is a great example. I love how it totally engrosses you as if you're watching it live, and I just can't see myself getting tired of it. And as far as spatial audio goes, this is still one of the best presentations I've seen to date. Tracks like Sure Thing by Miguel felt like they have so much more depth, and the separation between the vocals and the instruments just takes things to another level too. It's not just the broadness of the soundstage either. The audio for music from the Era 300 is dynamic and so textured. I really can't see you going wrong with this one if you're looking for that really unique and hands-on listening experience from your music. The Five, on the other hand, well, it doesn't benefit from the multi-directionality of spatial audio and doesn't quite compete when it comes to spaciousness or layering of sound, but like I said earlier, this is a powerhouse and it shows. It's bigger and it handles being at those higher volumes much more effectively than the Era 300 for me, and when it comes to music, I think this was most obvious in those bass-heavy tracks like Delilah by Fred Again. I would say the audio feels a little more precise and accurate with that stereo presentation for sure, and I can see why a lot of you guys would go for this sort of thing if you're more into that traditional stereo listening experience. Now, when it comes to stereo pairing, I think both of these speakers form a really formidable partnership when used with a second Five or a second Era 300. I'd probably say this is where both of these speakers really excel, and I think for me, this would be my ideal setup if I had to have either of these speakers at home. And of course, a pretty healthy budget to match. In terms of performance though, it's a lot the same as when we listen to these as standalone speakers. The Era 300s continued to offer that impressively wide and expansive stereo imaging, and the levels of separation were absolutely brilliant and definitely helped create an even more immersive experience with sound that truly feels like it's coming from all around you. The bass was actually really impressive too, and it was a nice step up in terms of accuracy and depth, but again, if you're the type of person who's really looking to push the low end, you're probably better off going for the Fives here. The Fives also continued in the same vein as the stereo pair and really impressed me in tracks like Liquid Spirit and really anything that had a decent bass track with their bigger and louder approach to music delivery. Admittedly, maybe you do lose out on some of the expressions and nuances of the Era 300s here, but you can push the Fives further, and if you're all about volume when it comes to music, these will be the better option for you. I think overall, you really can't go wrong with either of these for music. They both excel in different areas, and although they go about delivering music in different ways, both are worth their premium price tag in my book. It's just going to depend on your own specific listening preferences. There's also the option to get both of these speakers hooked up as rears in a Sonos Home Cinema, and although this might be a little overkill for some people, sometimes you just can't help but want the best of the best. Now, we have just filmed reviews of the Arc and the Beam with every rear option, and that video will go into things in a bit more depth. But for my general thoughts, I think whichever rear you go for, it's going to be a great solution for ramping up the performance of your Sonos soundbar, especially if you've got the Arc. Now, just like I've been banging on about this whole video, you are going to get slightly different performance with each speaker. The Fives provide a more traditional rear performance with more directional sound, accompanied by room-filling performance and impressive power, which I know a lot of you guys love, whereas the Era 300s are just in a league of their own when it comes to immersion for Atmos movies and things like that. It's really like nothing I've experienced before, and I think if cinematic level immersion at home is what you're after, this is going to be the best way to achieve it. Again, both of these are great rear choices, and if you've got the budget, by all means treat yourself, but depending on what you're actually trying to achieve from your Sonos Home Cinema, you might be better off going for one speaker over the other. So it's just something to think about there. So, how do I rank these then? Well, if I'm brutally honest with you guys, this is a tough one to call. That might sound like I'm sitting on the fence, but I'm not, trust me. I just think they both offer such different experiences and tick different boxes that when it comes to choosing, it's really going to come down to what you're after on a personal level. For me, I'm all about immersion, from my music, movies and TV, and because of that, I absolutely love the Era 300s. You also can't ignore the benefits of spatial audio either. That feeling when a Dolby Atmos track is mixed right really is hard to beat, especially when you've got these hooked up in a stereo pair. Obviously, if you're a Spotify only user right now with currently no spatial audio release date on the horizon, or 2-channel audio is 100% the way you want to go, then I can see why you'd be swayed the other way. That being said, as Sonos' 2 most premium wireless speakers, they are both really solid options. It's a case now of taking what we shared in this video and working out what's more important to you. And of course, deciding whether the Five is even worth the extra budget. Hopefully you enjoyed this one though, guys. I'd love to hear which one comes out on top for you. And as always, please share your experiences if you have either of these speakers at home to help the community out. Thanks for watching though, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.